Hi everybody, Dana Sparks, broker of Maximum One Greater Atlanta Realtors, and today's contract tip has to do with a form that we call Buyer Service Recommendations. Now, this is a form that I'm going to share with you guys. If you are a Maximum One agent, this form is available for you in the reference section of Paperless Pipeline. If you are not a Maximum One agent, thank you so much. I appreciate you watching these videos, and I will put a link to this form below. Before using any contract forms or sharing anything with your public, please confirm with your broker that you do have your broker's permission to use this form, and feel free to adapt it. We feel so strongly about this information that we do not mind sharing this form. This is, again, it's called Buyer Service Recommendations, and it is intended to help agents and brokers have a discussion with their buyers regarding some issues that a buyer should check out about a property prior to closing on the property. Now, if a buyer is binding under the Georgia Association of Realtors contract forms or the RE contract forms, this language and this verbiage and this information is spelled out numerous times in those contract forms under the brokerage disclaimer section, under the seller's property disclosure section, so forth and so on. Nevertheless, it is still a good idea to bring some of these issues to a buyer's attention before they close on a property. As if you have ever been in any of my classes, and as I always teach in my classes, nothing is an issue until it's an issue. So when we as real estate agents and brokers can avoid something being an issue, that's always a good idea. So what is it that I'm talking about? Well, what I'm talking about is bringing to your buyer's attention that there are a whole variety of issues that they should check out with respect to the property, to the contract, prior to closing on that contract. Now, if a buyer and seller are binding under a contract and there is a due diligence period or a buyer's right to terminate period, then these issues should be checked out prior to the end of due diligence if it is going to put a buyer in a situation where the buyer wants to terminate. That way their earnest money would be protected. Now, if a buyer is subject to a contract or in a binding contract where there is not a due diligence period or buyer's right to terminate period, it is still in a buyer's best interest to check these things out, and the buyer will have to confirm with the contract what their rights are with respect to some of these issues. So let's just look at this form, shall we? So basically, again, well, I'll just have to tell it to you what it is. But basically, we have called it service recommendations. And generally speaking, Georgia is what's called a caveat emptor state. And it is important that a buyer understands what that means. And again, we have a duty, in my opinion, as an agent and a broker to demonstrate that we have raised some of these issues with the public so that a public buyer can make an informed consented decision prior to going through with a real estate contract. So basically this form, we have it called Buyer Service Recommendations. And it says, it is professionally recommended that when purchasing a home, you should have it inspected by a certified licensed inspector for various reasons. Now, a lot of buyers have that understanding to perhaps have a property checked out with an inspector. But this form goes into a little bit more, addresses a few more issues that a buyer may not think of. So let me read it again. It is professionally recommended that when purchasing a home, you should have it inspected by a certified licensed inspector. Now, we know a home inspector, there's no licensing here in the state of Georgia, but for other types of inspectors, there is licensing. For various reasons, have the roof inspected, get a termite clearance letter and bond, get a survey of your property so you know the boundaries and easements, confirm the zoning, city ordinances, get owner's title insurance to protect your interests, have the house rekeyed, investigate or confirm zoning and city or county ordinances. Okay, I've got that twice. Propose changes to the roads or property lines, and seek any advice, consultation with any professionals regarding your interests with respect to this property and this contract. Caveat emptor, or buyer beware, is the law in Georgia, so a buyer should conduct any and all thorough investigations of the property to confirm that it is suitable for their purposes. If a contract to purchase a property is subject to a due diligence or buyer's right to terminate period, the buyer should conduct all inspections prior to the expiration of that time frame. Then on the form, you fill in the property address. And then there are a series of questions that a buyer answers yes or no and then signs. So, for example, I choose to get a Georgia wood infestation clearance letter and bond. Yes or no? I choose to have the property inspected by an independent home inspector of my choice. I choose to get a home warranty from a company of my choice. I choose to have the roof inspected by an independent roof inspector of my choice. I choose to have the property inspected for radon by an inspector or company of my choice. I choose to have the property inspected for mold by an inspector or company of my choice. I choose to have the property inspected for lead-based paint by an inspector or company of my choice. I choose to have the property inspected for asbestos by an inspector or company of my choice. I choose to get a property survey. I choose to get owner's title insurance at closing. Oops. I choose to review the covenants, conditions, and restrictions, CCRs, of the property, should there be any. I choose to confirm the current zoning and any imminent changes in zoning to the area. I choose to confirm any proposed changes to the property lines per roadworks, eminent domain, or utility easements. I choose to verify hazard insurance availability and premium price prior to the end of the due diligence period. I choose to confirm if my hazard insurance company will or will not require flood insurance. I choose to confirm any restrictions on parking large vehicles, for example, RVs, mobile homes, work trucks, etc., on or near the property. I choose to confirm the school district of the property. I choose to have the property inspected for wildlife in the attic or basement. I choose to confirm if there are any leases on the property, which I will assume with this purchase. I choose to have the property rekeyed and garage door remotes reprogrammed after closing. And then there are two fill in the blanks. And again, a buyer answers yes or no to all of those questions. Then there is the hold harmless language that says all parties agree to indemnify and hold agent and broker agent harmless from and against all claims, injuries, suits, and damages arising out of the party's decision with respect to the above choices. And then there is a place for the buyers to sign this document and you as the affiliated licensee to sign this document. This document does not need to be part of a contract. This is just a document that is signed between you and your buyer, whether that buyer be a client or a customer. And if your buyer refuses to fill it out, I suggest that you be able to demonstrate that you did present this form to your buyer and then make a note that the buyer chose not to fill that out. Again, the point is nothing is an issue until it's an issue. But if it's an issue, you want to be able to demonstrate, as well as for customer service, regardless of it being an issue, that you did in fact have these discussions with your buyer regarding all of the things that Georgia law via caveat emptor does put the onus on them to investigate prior to closing the transaction. It is their responsibility to check out the lot lines, check out easements, check out any change in zoning, make sure the school district hasn't changed, as well as have the property inspected, termite letters, check with their hazard insurance, make sure their loan's going to go through. There's a whole variety of things that a buyer, there's a lot of work to buy in a house. So there's a lot of issues that a buyer needs to investigate. And again, if a buyer is in a contract and it is subject to due diligence, the buyer will want to have these things investigated prior to the end of the due diligence period to help the buyer make an informed consented decision if they are going to go through with the transaction or terminate and have their earnest money protected by terminating and sending notice of termination under due diligence prior to the end of that period. So again, there are a lot of things that a buyer may not think to check out, and we don't want any of that to become an issue after they have closed on the property. Zoning issues, school districts change, the commute to work, all those kinds of things. There could be a road widening project and the front yard will be taken up by eminent domain. Again, these are things that you don't think about in the normal, well, I don't want to say normal, nothing's normal nowadays, but throughout the course of buying a home. And so this document will help prompt a discussion with a buyer to bring to a buyer's attention that, hey, these are things that I probably want to check out before I go through with the purchase of this property. So thank you guys so much for watching. I hope this contract tip and form helps you out. Again, Maximum One agents, this is there is a copy of this in the reference section of Paperless Pipeline, and I will link a copy below. If you are not a Maximum One agent, you are more than welcome to use or modify this document, but please get your broker's permission prior to using any forms with your buying or selling public, whether they be a client or a customer. Thank you guys so much for watching. Dana Sparks, broker of Maximum One Greater Atlanta Realtors, satisfying your needs with service, innovation, and education.